The first time I saw Nathan Reed, he was walking through a room that had already forced me to my knees. The emergency lights painted the chamber red as the artificial gravity climbed past 3 times galactic standard. Every breath tasted like hot metal. My vision narrowed until the world became a tunnel of warning symbols and shaking steel. The environmental system announced that the air would become unbreathable in 47 seconds. I remember staring at the floor, one hand pressed against it, trying to force my body upright. I was Sabotage of Valor, the last known Deathworlder. I had crossed volcanic plains under skies filled with ash. I had survived pressure storms strong enough to flatten reinforced shelters. Entire delegations had traveled across the galaxy just to hear me explain how my species had evolved on a planet that treated survival like a daily exam. I was not supposed to be the one struggling. Then a pair of plain black work boots stepped into view. They moved slowly, almost casually, as if the crushing gravity were nothing more than a steep staircase. I lifted my head and saw the human standing above me. Nathan Reed. No armor. No breathing mask. No visible implants. Just a white-skinned man in a gray engineering uniform with brown hair, tired eyes, and an expression of mild concern. He looked down at me and spoke in the same calm voice he had used when we met 6 hours earlier. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" For one irrational second, I thought the translation system had failed. The chamber was coming apart around us. Warning alarms screamed from every wall. Heat rolled through the room in heavy waves, and the gravity pressed nearly 600 pounds of force across my body. Yet Nathan stood with his shoulders relaxed, breathing through his nose like he was waiting in line for coffee. I tried to answer, but my lungs refused to cooperate. He crouched beside me and checked the cracked display on my wrist. His heartbeat showed on the medical scanner. Elevated, but steady. Far too steady. "You need to conserve oxygen," he said. "I'm going to get you out." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell him that humans came from a quiet little world the Council had barely bothered to classify. I wanted to explain that I was the creature built for this, not him. Instead, Nathan placed one hand beneath my arm and lifted me as though my 7-foot frame weighed no more than a travel bag. That was the moment my certainty began to collapse. Until then, I believed the galaxy contained garden-world species and one deathworld species. Mine. I believed Valor stood alone at the edge of what life could endure. I believed every other civilization had been shaped by comfort, caution, and worlds that wanted them alive. Nathan Reed did not correct me when we first met. He did not boast. He did not explain what Earth had done to create him. He simply carried me toward the sealed exit while the chamber continued raising conditions beyond Valari survival limits. Behind us, the computer repeated the same message in 12 languages. No known species could remain conscious in that environment. Nathan glanced at the warning panel, wiped sweat from his forehead, and sighed. "Yeah," he said quietly. "This is getting a little rough." 6 hours earlier, I had looked at him and seen the softest creature in the room. I did not yet understand that softness was not weakness. Sometimes it was simply what a predator looked like when nothing nearby had given it a reason to be afraid. 6 hours before the chamber failed, I stood beneath the white lights of the Galactic Survival Conference while 3,000 delegates waited for me to speak. They had come from worlds with gentle seasons, shallow oceans, and predators small enough to fit inside household containers. To them, I was not simply Saravas. I was proof that intelligent life could emerge from a planet designed to erase it. Valor had oceans hot enough to cook unprotected tissue, mountain storms that carried glass-like dust, and gravity that made an average visitor feel as if someone had stacked another body on top of them. My people built our first cities underground because the surface rarely remained stable for more than a few weeks. We learned to read the color of clouds, the vibration of stone, and the silence that came before the ground shifted. Survival was not a skill on Valor. It was manners. The Council had classified my world as a Category 9 death world, the highest rating their system allowed. That single number followed me everywhere. Children asked for my image. Scientists requested samples of my blood. Military academies invited me to explain how Valari bodies handled heat, pressure, and low oxygen. At formal dinners, nervous diplomats watched me eat as though I might suddenly decide they looked more interesting than the meal. I encouraged that misunderstanding when it was useful. Fear opened doors faster than politeness. On the conference stage, I explained how my species had adapted to conditions that would force most civilized beings into emergency shelters. I kept my tone calm because calm made the facts sound worse. When I mentioned that Valari children began outdoor survival training at 6 years old, the audience went silent. When I described our seasonal pressure storms, a delegate in the front row quietly checked the structural rating of the building. I noticed and smiled. The crowd laughed, but not comfortably. That was how these events always worked. They wanted the monster, but only if the monster stayed behind a podium. My reputation had become larger than my life. I was the last Deathworlder, the sole representative of a category the galaxy believed should not exist. I told myself the title was merely political theater, yet I guarded it like territory. It gave meaning to every scar, every warning drill, and every night I had spent listening to Valor shake beneath my family shelter. If another Deathworld species existed, then perhaps my world was not unique. Perhaps I was not unique. I never admitted that thought, even to myself. After the applause ended, I stepped away from the stage and found a human waiting beside the environmental control console. He was studying the chamber specifications with one hand wrapped around a paper cup. His conference badge read Nathan Reed, Terran Emergency Systems. He looked up, met my eyes without hesitation, and gave me a polite nod. No fear, no fascination, not even surprise. Then he glanced back at the settings and asked, "Is the gravity supposed to be this low?" I stared at him, certain I had misunderstood. The demonstration chamber was already set high enough to make 4 delegates request medical waivers. Nathan took another drink from his cup and waited for my answer. That was my first warning. I ignored it. I looked at Nathan Reed, then at the gravity controls, then back at Nathan Reed. The chamber was set at 1.8 times standard gravity. For most delegates, that was enough to turn a demonstration into a medical emergency. Nathan stood beside the console with a paper cup in one hand and a maintenance tablet in the other, wearing nothing more protective than a gray work uniform and sturdy black boots. He had no armor plates beneath the fabric, no breathing equipment, no reinforced joints. His skin was pale and completely exposed at the hands and face. Even his eyes looked ordinary, brown and steady, without the extra membranes common among species from hostile environments. Low, I repeated. The current setting is above the safety limit for half the conference. Nathan glanced at the display. That explains the warning labels. He said it without humor, which somehow made the comment more irritating. What gravity level do humans normally use? I asked. Earth average, he said. About 1 full Earth gravity. That does not answer my question. It does where I come from. He tapped the screen and pulled up a diagnostic map. His fingers moved quickly, but not nervously. Your chamber is using galactic standard as its reference point. Earth gravity is a little stronger than that. Not enough to matter much to us. Not enough to matter. I had watched trained diplomats struggle to stand during the first equipment test. Nathan spoke as if the difference were a loose floor tile. I stepped closer, expecting to find a concealed support harness beneath his uniform. There was none. The fabric rested naturally across his shoulders. No powered frame. No stabilization field. Nothing. Are you military? I asked. No. Enhanced rescue unit. No. Genetically modified? Nathan finally looked away from the console. Not unless my parents forgot to mention something important. His expression remained calm, but there was a faint edge of amusement in it. I did not appreciate being treated like the confused one. Then why are you assigned to a Deathworld simulation chamber? I inspect emergency systems. He lifted his badge slightly. The organizers requested someone familiar with heat, pressure loss, structural failure, and contaminated air. And Earth trained you for all of that. Montana help. I waited for an explanation. None came. Nathan returned to his work and crouched beside an access panel. He removed the cover, studied the wiring, and reached inside with his bare hand. A warning light flashed amber. The internal components were still hot from the morning calibration. That panel is above 140 degrees Fahrenheit, I said. Nathan pulled his hand back, looked at his fingertips, and frowned. Warm, uncomfortable. He reached for an insulated tool, more annoyed by the delay than the temperature. I told myself the display had to be wrong. Humans were soft-skinned mammals with no natural protection and an embarrassing lack of defensive features. Nathan Reed looked less like a survivor and more like someone sent to repair an office air conditioner. Yet he moved through the chamber with the quiet confidence of a creature standing inside its natural habitat. When I asked whether he understood what the simulation was designed to reproduce, he nodded. High gravity, extreme heat, low oxygen, airborne minerals, unstable pressure. Conditions from Valor, I said. Conditions that made my species famous. Nathan considered that for a moment, then gave me a respectful smile. Sounds challenging. Challenging. Not impossible. Not terrifying. Challenging. I decided then that the human was either deeply uninformed or trying to impress me. Both explanations felt reasonable. Neither was correct. Nathan finished the first inspection in 12 minutes, which should have reassured me. Instead, he requested permission to raise the chamber gravity. The lower settings are not giving me a reliable load test, he explained. I reminded him that the equipment had already reached the limit recommended for unprotected personnel. He checked the empty observation deck, confirmed that every access door was sealed, and increased the field by another 20%. The floor seemed to pull harder beneath my boots. Nathan only rolled his shoulders. Better, he said. I watched him cross the chamber while carrying a 40-pound diagnostic case in one hand. His steps remained even. His breathing did not change. I told myself that humans might possess unusual muscle density, but the medical summaries I had read described them as average mammals from an unremarkable world. There had to be another explanation. Nathan opened his paper cup and took a long drink. The chamber scanner immediately flashed a chemical warning. Your beverage contains a restricted stimulant, I said. He looked into the cup. Coffee. The system estimates that amount could cause cardiac distress in several registered species. It helps me wake up. You consume poison to become more alert. Nathan considered the question. That sounds dramatic, but technically, yes. He took another drink. Before I could respond, he stopped moving. His head tilted slightly toward the eastern wall. The chamber was quiet except for the low hum of the gravity generators. Do you hear that? He asked. My auditory range exceeded the human standard by almost 40%. I heard nothing unusual. Nathan set down his cup, crossed the room, and placed his palm against the wall. 5 seconds later, the structural monitor produced a soft warning tone. A hairline stress alert appeared near the upper support frame. He had noticed the vibration before the sensors. Loose mounting bracket, he said. Probably harmless now. Not harmless under full pressure. He marked the location and continued as though the incident meant nothing. I followed him more carefully after that. Every few minutes, another small inconsistency appeared. He stepped into a heated calibration zone and called it dry. He entered reduced oxygen conditions and complained only that the air felt stale. He lifted a maintenance cover that normally required 2 technicians, then apologized for setting it down too loudly. None of these actions seemed impressive by themselves. Together, they formed a pattern I did not want to recognize. I tried to redirect the conversation toward Valor. I described the electrical storms that crossed our northern continent, with wind speeds above 150 miles per hour and lightning that could continue for days. Nathan nodded with genuine interest. We get some rough weather back home, he said. Nothing exactly like that, but Montana storms can turn fast. He told me about blizzards that erased roads, summer heat that cracked the ground, and cold strong enough to freeze exposed skin. He spoke about these conditions as seasonal inconveniences, not planetary threats. I finally asked why Earth was listed as incompletely classified. Nathan gave me a strange look. Politics, probably. Or paperwork. Humans are very good at both. He smiled, but the answer felt practiced. Behind him, the chamber lights flickered once. Nathan looked toward the ceiling before the power monitor registered the change. That should not happen, he said. For the first time, the humor left his voice. I should have ended the demonstration then. I should have ordered a full shutdown. Instead, I assumed the human was being overly cautious. That was my second mistake. Nathan moved toward the main control station just as every light in the chamber turned white. Not red, not amber, white. On Valor, white alarms were reserved for system failures too serious to describe individually. The entrance door sealed with a heavy mechanical thud, and the observation windows darkened behind reinforced shutters. I reached for the emergency release, but the panel rejected my command. Manual control has been transferred, the system announced. Environmental demonstration sequence initiated. Nathan was already at the console. That sequence was not scheduled, he said. His fingers moved across the controls, but every command returned the same message. External authorization required. The floor pulled downward with sudden force. My knees bent, and the metal beneath my boots groaned. The gravity display climbed past 2 times standard, then continued rising. Across the chamber, 2 conference technicians dropped their equipment and struggled to remain upright. Nathan grabbed the edge of the console, but did not fall. "Sarah," he said, "get them to the emergency shelter." His tone had changed. The quiet humor was gone. I crossed the room and helped the technicians toward a reinforced alcove built into the western wall. Before we reached it, heated air poured from the ceiling vents. The temperature jumped from 72 degrees Fahrenheit to 90, then 110. The demonstration chamber had been designed to reproduce dangerous conditions one at a time. Someone had activated all of them together. Atmospheric oxygen decreasing, the system announced. Airborne mineral density increasing. A bitter metallic taste filled my mouth. Fine gray particles drifted through the white light. Nathan pulled 2 emergency masks from a wall compartment and handed them to the technicians. There were only 2. "Where is yours?" I asked. "They need them more. You are not adapted to this environment." He looked at the rising numbers on the display. "We can debate that later." A sharp vibration passed through the floor. The gravity reached 2.6 times standard. One technician cried out in panic as the shelter door refused to open. I forced my fingers into the manual grip and pulled. The mechanism moved less than an inch. Nathan appeared beside me and examined the lock. "The safety bolts are engaged from outside," he said. "This is not a malfunction." That was when I saw Dr. Kaur in the observation booth above us. His narrow silhouette stood behind the darkened glass, one hand resting on the external control panel. Kaur had spent years challenging Vaylor's classification. He claimed my reputation was built on exaggerated records and carefully controlled demonstrations. He wanted proof that a Valari could fail. I had never imagined he would risk an entire chamber to obtain it. His voice came through the intercom. "Let us see how long the famous Deathworlder remains impressive without favorable settings." The connection ended before I could respond. Nathan looked up at the booth, then back at the trap technicians. He did not curse. He did not threaten Kaur. He simply studied the room. "How long can your people handle this?" he asked. "At the current level, perhaps 15 minutes. The temperature passed 130 degrees. The oxygen warning shifted from yellow to red. "And humans?" I asked. Nathan loosened his collar and looked toward the sealed exit. "Depends on the human." A security unit unfolded from the far wall, activated by the corrupted emergency system. Its sensors swept across the chamber and identified every moving body as unauthorized. Nathan stepped between it and the shelter. "Stay behind me," he said. I almost objected. I was Sarah Voss. I was the one built for hostile worlds. Then the gravity reached 3 times standard, and for the first time in my life, my own legs began to shake. The security unit advanced 1 measured step, but Nathan did not look at it. His attention remained on the environmental display, where every number was still moving in the wrong direction. The gravity field climbed past 3.2 times standard. The temperature reached 146 degrees Fahrenheit. Oxygen dropped below the level required for clear thought in most species. My Valari body had been shaped by pressure, heat, and thin air, yet even I could feel my strength draining faster than it should. The technicians were sealed behind the shelter window now, breathing through their masks while Nathan worked the damaged manual lock. I tried to join him. My first step was slow. My second was worse. By the third, the floor seemed determined to keep me. "Your left side is dropping," Nathan said without turning. "I am fine. You are not." I wanted to correct him, but a wave of dizziness erased the words. The mineral dust had thickened until every breath scraped against my throat. Valari lungs could filter volcanic ash, but this chamber was mixing compounds that had never existed together on my world. Kaur had not recreated Vaylor. He had built an argument out of every hostile setting in the database and forced us to stand inside it. Nathan finally released the shelter mechanism. The reinforced door opened just wide enough for fresh emergency air to reach the technicians. He should have been exhausted. Instead, he checked both of them, adjusted one mask, and returned to the center console. I took another step toward him. My knee touched the floor. The impact was not painful. That frightened me more. My body had begun choosing which sensations were still important. "Sarah." Nathan crossed the distance between us. Stay where you are. I am the only person here adapted to these conditions. Then the conditions are worse than advertised. He crouched beside me and placed 2 fingers against the side of my neck. The gesture was absurdly gentle. Your pulse is unstable. Human, I managed. You should be unconscious. Nathan glanced at the medical scanner clipped to his belt. His own heart rate was elevated, but controlled. His oxygen level had fallen, yet it remained within a functional range. A line of sweat moved down his temple. His exposed skin had turned red from the heat. Those were the only signs that the chamber affected him at all. I have worked in hotter places, he said. Not with this gravity. No, the gravity is new. He said it like an interesting problem. The chamber announced that the atmosphere would become critical in 60 seconds. Nathan looked toward the main exit, then toward the emergency power conduit running beneath the floor. I recognized the calculation in his eyes. He was not wondering whether he could move. He was deciding what to carry first. This environment exceeds Valari survival recommendations, I warned. Nathan slid one arm beneath my shoulders and helped me upright. This is not that bad yet. I stared at him. No machine supported his weight. No hidden fields surrounded his body. He was breathing the same poisoned air and standing beneath the same crushing force that had put me on the floor. For the first time since leaving Valor, I felt something colder than fear. I felt uncertainty. The galaxy had measured me, tested me, and declared that life could endure no more than my species already had. Nathan Reed was quietly proving that the galaxy had stopped measuring too soon. Nathan lowered me beside the shelter door and turned toward the security unit. Its warning lights shifted from yellow to red as it rolled closer, blocking the shortest path to the emergency controls. Unauthorized movement detected, it announced. Remain still. Nathan looked at the machine, then at the maintenance panel built into its side. I need about 10 seconds, he said. It will not permit you to approach, I warned. Then I will give it something else to watch. He picked up the empty diagnostic case and slid it across the floor. The unit tracked the movement immediately, rotating away from him exactly as its safety program required. Nathan moved before the machine completed the turn. He reached the side panel, opened it with a maintenance key, and pulled the emergency sensor connector free. The unit stopped in place. No dramatic struggle. No wasted motion. One moment it controlled the room. The next, it was silent. Nathan was already moving toward the exit. He removed a steel access bar from the wall and fitted it between the sealed door and its frame. Under normal gravity, 2 technicians would have needed powered equipment to shift that barrier. Nathan planted his boots, tightened both hands around the bar, and leaned back. The metal groaned. The door moved half an inch. He adjusted his grip and pulled again. The opening widened. Fresh air slipped through the gap. That should not be physically possible, I said. Nathan did not look at me. That door was built to open. It just forgot. The technician stared through the shelter window as he forced enough space for one person to pass. He guided them out first, checking their masks before sending them into the corridor. Then he returned for me. You need to leave, I told him. The main reactor control is still locked inside this chamber. I know. If the heat cycle reaches maximum, the emergency systems will fail. I know that too. Nathan lifted me carefully, carrying my weight across his shoulders as if this were a rescue drill. Outside the chamber, medical personnel rushed forward. He placed me on a transport platform and turned back toward the opening. I caught his sleeve. You cannot go back. Someone has to shut it down. Send a machine. The machines think we are the problem. His voice remained calm, but his eyes had changed. Every trace of casual humor was gone. Keep the corridor clear. Then he stepped back into the chamber. Through the observation window, I watched him cross the room under conditions that had already defeated every safety limit. He reached the reactor housing, opened the manual cooling controls, and held the emergency release in place while the system fought to close it. The temperature climbed. The gravity field pulsed. Nathan did not move. Slowly, the warning display changed from red to amber, then from amber to green. The vents opened. The pressure stabilized. Nathan released the control and walked out under his own power. A medic scanned him twice, certain the first reading was wrong. Where did you receive combat training? I asked. Nathan accepted an oxygen mask, but did not put it on. I did not. Then rescue training. Military engineering. Hazard operations. He shook his head. County fire and rescue. The translator repeated the words perfectly. He was not an elite soldier. He was not a secret weapon. He was a local emergency worker from Earth. Nathan finally raised the mask to his face and looked back at the chamber. I have handled worse calls, he said. That was when I stopped wondering what made Nathan Reed different from other humans. I began wondering what kind of world considered him ordinary. The medical team placed Nathan inside a full diagnostic scanner and ran the examination 3 times. The first result was declared impossible. The second was blamed on damaged sensors. By the third, the room had become completely silent. Nathan had no artificial organs, no powered implants, no reinforced skeleton, and no genetic modifications designed for hazardous environments. His muscles were dense, but normal for a healthy human. His lungs showed mild irritation from the chamber, but no permanent damage. His heart remained strong and steady. The chief physician stared at the display as though it had insulted her education. This individual is biologically unremarkable, she finally said. Nathan raised one eyebrow. Thank you, doctor. Nobody laughed. I sat on a medical platform across the room, wrapped in a cooling blanket while my breathing returned to normal. The words biologically unremarkable repeated. In my mind, an ordinary human had remained functional inside conditions that had overwhelmed the galaxy's most famous Deathworlder. That did not make sense unless the galaxy had misunderstood Earth from the beginning. I requested access to the planetary archive. The system denied me. I used my conference authority. It denied me again. Nathan watched the security screen and sighed. That usually means someone classified it. The council representative entered an emergency authorization code. A hidden file appeared beneath Earth's public record. It had not been incomplete. It had been sealed. The first page contained no military secrets, advanced weapons, or hidden technology. It contained weather. Earth produced hurricanes wider than nations, tornadoes capable of lifting vehicles, blizzards that buried entire towns, and lightning storms that crossed hundreds of miles. Its oceans generated waves taller than conference towers. Its deserts reached temperatures above 130 degrees Fahrenheit, while its polar regions fell below -100. The next page listed geological threats. Earth's surface shifted constantly. Mountains rose. Continents moved. The ground opened without warning. Volcanoes released heat, ash, and gases from beneath the crust. Then came the biological record. Venomous animals, toxic plants, disease-carrying insects, predators that hunted from land, water, and air, microorganisms too small to see that could defeat complex immune systems. The archive continued until the council representative stopped scrolling. How did your species survive this? She whispered. Nathan looked genuinely confused by the question. We adapted. The system displayed the human evolutionary profile. Humans had not become the fastest creatures on Earth. They had not grown armor, claws, or venom. They had developed endurance, coordination, memory, and the ability to cooperate under pressure. They could travel for hours in heat that forced many animals to stop. They could recover from injury, adjust to changing diets, and build shelter in nearly every climate their planet offered. Most disturbing of all, their bodies responded to repeated strain by becoming stronger. The final classification attempt appeared in large letters across the display. Earth exceeded the existing Deathworld scale. Native species status, adapted. Nobody spoke for several seconds. I had spent years believing Valor represented the outer boundary of survival. Earth was not beyond that boundary. Earth had erased it. I turned toward Nathan. Are all humans capable of what you did? He shook his head. Not exactly. Some are stronger. Some are faster. Some handle stress better. That answer gave me a moment of relief. Then he added, but most people back home would have tried to help. The relief vanished. The galaxy had not discovered one exceptional survivor. It had discovered billions of ordinary people raised by a world that never stopped testing them. By the next morning, the conference had removed my title from every public display. I had expected that to hurt. For years, the words Last Deathworlder had followed my name through laboratories, military halls, and council chambers. They had turned my survival into a symbol and my home into the final limit of life. Now the title felt small. Dr. Core had been taken into council custody before sunrise. The investigation found that he had altered the chamber controls, disabled the safety locks, and ignored repeated warnings from the system. He would answer for what he had done, but I no longer cared about his arguments. Core had wanted to prove that I was not exceptional. In the end, he had revealed something far more important. The conference gathered again at noon. This time, Nathan Reed stood beside me on the main stage. He had exchanged his damaged uniform for a clean gray work shirt, but he still looked like a maintenance employee who had entered the wrong meeting. 3,000 delegates watched him in complete silence. Some wore protective breathing equipment, even though the atmosphere was perfectly safe. Nathan noticed and leaned toward me. "Are they expecting me to breathe fire?" he asked. "They are reconsidering every assumption they have ever made about your species," I replied. "That sounds exhausting." I stepped toward the podium and looked across the chamber. The same. Delegates who had once studied me with fearful fascination now kept glancing at Nathan. I told them that Valor remained dangerous. I told them my people were still strong. Then I told them strength was not a throne that belonged to one species. It was a response, a decision, the ability to continue when the world demanded that you stop. Nathan had not survived because he wanted applause. He had stayed because others needed help. That truth unsettled the council more than any medical report. A creature that endured danger for pride could be predicted. A creature that walked into danger for strangers was something else entirely. After the session, Nathan prepared to leave for Earth. I met him beside the departure gate, where his small travel bag rested near his boots. "I studied more of your planet," I said. "Earth contains regions with earthquakes, wildfires, floods, extreme cold, and storms strong enough to remove buildings. That is true. Your oceans are filled with animals large enough to damage transport vessels. Also true. Your people visit those oceans for recreation." Nathan smiled. "Some of us do." I studied him for a moment. "What do humans call a planet like Earth?" He looked through the station window at the stars. He did not answer immediately. Perhaps he thought I was asking for a scientific term. Perhaps he understood that I was asking something larger. Finally, he lifted his travel bag and said, "Home." Then he offered me his hand. I took it carefully, no longer because I feared hurting him, but because I understood how little I understood. Nathan boarded his shuttle, and the doors closed behind him. I watched the human vessel disappear into the traffic lanes while the conference continued rewriting its classification system. They added new categories, new warnings, and new survival limits. None of them felt sufficient. I was born on a death world. Nathan Reed was born on the world that taught death to run.